All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Off by One Security stream. I always like to apologize for the countdown timer because it makes everything feel so, I don't know, formal or epic or something. But it always takes a while for it to connect to StreamYard or not StreamYard, but StreamYard to connect to LinkedIn and X and YouTube and all that stuff. So welcome, everyone, to our latest stream. We've got Marco Casagrande and Daniele Antonioli from France and from Sweden. So long distance today. It's why we're starting a little bit early. Just an hour though, so I really appreciate you guys joining us so late your time. Thank you for that. Congratulations for your DEF CON talk. I know how hard it is to get accepted to DEF CON, especially in the 4 tracks, track 1 through 4. It's tough this year. So I got accepted last year, but not this year because I know what I did wrong. I submitted a talk on AI.
Everybody was doing that, right?
We got about 5,000 talks on AI, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's some good stuff to share. But yeah, today we're going to be looking at CTRAPS, CTAP impersonation and API confusion attacks on FIDO2. And I know we've had, of course, our wonderful friends from Evil Jinx, Kuba Gretzky, and a lot of talks have been on things like multi-factor authentication bypass and how things like YubiKeys and others and FIDO2 specification are some of the things that can help protect us and prevent those attacks from being possible. So definitely very interested in the research that you guys did. If you want to start by giving a little background each on yourselves, that would be great. Maybe Daniel, you go first.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you again for the invitation, Stephen. It's great that we can share our research results with you and with your audience and your YouTube channel. So my name is Daniele. I'm an assistant professor and a researcher. I'm based in France, and I work in a research center and university which is called Eurecom, where we do research in digital security, communication security, and also AI. And yeah, the university is based in the French Riviera, so in the southern part of France, which is a really good place to live. Marco, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm Marco. I'm an Italian guy. So I've done my PhD under the supervision of Daniele. Then I moved to Sweden. So now I work as a postdoc in KTH. So it's one of the top ranked university in Europe, among the best in Sweden. And yeah, it's just a little bit colder than in the French Riviera. So, but I adapted.
Nice. Oh, that's cool. So Daniel, you're Marco's advisor for a PhD, or you were?
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
great.
it was. Yeah, and we're still collaborating, of course. Yes, Marco was my first PhD student actually, so I'm particularly proud of Marco's achievement, and we managed to publish research papers both in academic conferences but also in hacking events like DEF CON, Black Hat, and other I/O. So Marco was extremely successful doing his PhD, I have to say.
Great, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I live right next to UC Berkeley in California, and like there's a lot of students there, of course, going through their PhD. And I didn't get my degree from there; I only got my master's. But it's nice to be so close and be working with some really smart people out of there. So it's great. I think when I went to look for how long it would take to get a PhD from a master's, I was talking to UC Davis and a couple other schools, and they were like, "Oh, 5 to 7 years, and you need to be in the computer lab almost every day." I was like, "That's just not going to be possible in my point in my career." So I respect anyone.
Yeah, that's correct. But if you come to France, you want to do a PhD at Eurecom, then in 3 years you can get a PhD. So you can consider it if you want.
Cool. So maybe you can start by explaining a little bit about I got quite a few questions from Discord. And of course, I always encourage people to post questions on the chat if you have them. But how did what made you select this target? And maybe you can give a little background on what CTAP is even.
So yes. So I think my screen is shared. I will just have a background slide just to have visualize FIDO2. So
yep,
yes,
I've got it up.
Should be ready. Perfect. So you told me that. So that's very nice that you already done work with authentication. So FIDO2 is the de facto protocol, de facto standard for user authentication. The main goal is to mitigate phishing, and you usually use authenticators. So this small dongle here, this small security key, is a FIDO key. It contains this FIDO specification and allows you to securely register and authenticate into websites. So the main entities are the authenticator, the hardware, the client, which is a web browser or your laptop or your phone, depends on the platform, very varied. And then the line party, which is the online service you want to log into, you want to authenticate to. So it's just your online account to, for example, GitHub, Facebook, Microsoft. There are a lot of services using FIDO2. Just Microsoft alone allows you to go into Outlook, ChatGPT, Minecraft, OneDrive, and so on. So the surface is very large. The user base is very large. And a lot of industries, institutions, people are transitioning from passwords to FIDO authentication because it's very practical. You just carry your key, put it in the PC. You probably have to press a button, maybe enter a PIN code, and then you are set. There are two ways of doing this authentication. One way is the passwordless, so passkeys. It's a very popular keyword right now. So you just plug it in, press the button, and you're done. You don't put your username, you don't need to put your password. And we will refer to this as discoverable credentials, meaning that the credentials are inside the key. And then the other way is for second factor, multi-factor authentication. So here you have to put your username and your password plus another factor. And one of them could be a FIDO authenticator. So that's the other way around to authenticate. And this is what we refer as non-discoverable credentials. So meaning that these credentials are stored in the line party. They are encrypted, but still, there's the difference. Some credentials are in the line party, and some of them are in the authenticator. So that's the gist of it. Since we have these three entities, the FIDO specification actually is separated into CTAP and WebAuthn. So two protocols. CTAP is the Client-to-Authenticator Protocol, which makes sense because here it connects the authenticator to the client and vice versa. The technologies available, the transports available are USB, NFC, and Bluetooth Low Energy, even though the last one is discontinued. There was an issue with the Titan keys where the Bluetooth proximity check was not secure, and you could break the security, log into other people's accounts. So after this attempt, we didn't see any release of BLE keys. And on the other side, the WebAuthn protocol, which is the web part, so the connection between the client and the relying party. And this is over a normal internet connection. And our research, our work, focused on CTAP. We look at the CTAP attack surface. That's the line that we took. Why? So to start answering your questions, why do we look into CTAP? So the authenticator exposes a set of APIs, exposing operations that the client can request to the authenticator. Some of them are very dangerous, could be very dangerous. For example, the factory reset operation. If an attacker could call this factory reset operation on the authenticator, it has destructive outcome where you lose your account, you lose your credential, so you can't log into. Maybe you have to write an email to Google to say, oh, okay, I forgot, I don't have my key. I have to send my ID card to prove that I'm me. And it's a long procedure. So this is just one of the risks involved. So the surface is pretty large because there are a lot of APIs. The risks are high because you can lose your account, you can be tracked, so there are privacy issues because you can see on which website the user is logging into. You can use these identifiers to create a fingerprint and say every time you plug the key, you understand that this key belongs to this user, and this user has credentials on these ranked parties. And the more FIDO2 gets popular, the more website will use this. So it's an emergent technology. Okay. So our attacks, we use two techniques. The first one is client impersonation, and the second one is API confusion. So API confusion is a novel one. We coined this term. This is our label. And I will start by explaining client impersonation. So the idea is that, okay, we know that there are CTAP APIs that are dangerous. How can a client, a malicious client, call them to cause issues to the authenticator? So by looking at the CTAP specification, by looking at the FIDO reference threat model, we said, okay, FIDO assumes that the client is always trusted. So they didn't protect the connection. They didn't require to authenticate the client. So any client is trusted, meaning that any client, even malicious ones, can connect to the key and call the APIs. The only security requirements, only security mechanisms that protect these APIs are user verification and user presence. User verification is a PIN code. The user sets it for his authenticator and just puts it in, submits it when he's using the key. And then user presence is, for example, touching the physical button on the key. So this is user presence. As long as the user is providing this, the client can call whatever API he wants. So I will just show a demo. Why not? So here's the I will show you so here I have the Wireshark setup. I'm monitoring the USB traffic in my computer, and we prepared these sectors so we can actually visualize which API is being called. So I will just enlarge this. So I will talk about the calls more in depth in 1 minute. So here we are monitoring the traffic, and here we have I'm calling. Let me get this. So this one is one of the tools in our toolkit. You can visit the CTRAPS toolkit in GitHub, download all the tools we are using today in the demos. And this one is an Electron app, a Node.js app, a web app that communicates with the keys. We have control over the USB human interface device traffic, the USB HID, and we can send our custom-made packets. These packets are compliant with CTAP. So we are sending packets that any client can send. Okay, so we have our key already connected. So now let's extract some information. So, for example, here we can see the console, which just with one click, we can see all the credentials and user identifiers and the relying party. So this means we have one relying party, Microsoft. This relying party has multiple credentials. So multiple, credentials, makes sense. This is the identifier for the credential, and this is the identifier for the user. And with this, you can track people because they are unique. User identifier is generated by the relying party, and the credential identifier is generated by the authenticator when you are creating the credential, and so on. So here we have the second credential, and we're tracking other accounts. So for example, here we are trying to track this Synology website, but there are no credentials. So this is the first attack. The idea is that anyone can look at this without user presence, user verification. So if you connect your key, this is the information I get in my malicious application. And maybe my malicious application is saying, I will give you the hardware details of the key, or yes, we will do the FIDO login, but maybe he's actually doing the FIDO authentication, but on the undercover is also tracking you and tracking which website you are visiting. And of course, this is not something that you want your client your browser or your Android app to do. You just want to authenticate to one single website. That's it. So this is one. So and let's see this security attack. So first one was the privacy attack. This one is a security attack. So we want to delete all credentials stored in the authenticator. So those are discoverable credentials. When you register a credential, you can choose discoverable or non-discoverable. It is the client that chooses, the party that chooses the website. So here we can destroy all of them in the authenticator. So in this case, I need the PIN. So this means that I need user verification in order to do this. I need the user to input the PIN, but I don't need any button press. So all APIs have different security mechanisms. Some of them require user verification, some of them user presence, some both, some none. Depends. So here I execute the attack. Sorry, I have to reset it because I chose the incorrect key. Because I have different scripts for different keys. So this one, yes. This one should be correct, yes. So what's happening here? So first, now I will guide you through the FIDO protocol. So everything that happens when you are using it. So first, we are scanning the key, and this is the information you get. So this is the interface we are looking into. You can see the Ubico. It's a YubiKey, so Ubico is the manufacturer, and other, let's say, release version. Then you can see that we start this client PIN key agreement. So here, since we are talking about the user verification, since you are sharing the PIN code, we want to share it encrypted. So there is a Elite Kurdi-Fjellman public crypto exchange. And in the end, you have a secret, you encrypt the PIN, and then it is passed over the authenticator. And the authenticator confirms that the PIN is actually the one that the user set. So this is all the Elite Kurdi-Fjellman agreement. Now we can see some info. For example, we are storing 5 discovered credentials. There are 5 in the key. Then we start calling CTAP APIs. So in this case, we are exploiting one of the newest APIs. One of the reasons why we looked at the CTAP is that we passed from CTAP 2.0 to CTAP 2.1, and now CTAP 2.2. And some of the new features were discovered credentials and APIs that manage discovered credentials. So this one is one of the newest APIs introduced. And we use subcommands to perform our attack. So first, we enumerate all running parties inside the key. So there is a credential registered with the Web10 IO running party, one with this example resident, one with anon.com, login Microsoft, and that's it. So first, we get the running parties. Then we enumerate the credentials. So now that we have running parties, we say, now I give you Microsoft, and now give me all the credentials for Microsoft. So we get the credential identifier here and collect all of them. And finally, when you get all the credential identifiers, now we can, where is it? Here. And we have this identifier. We can delete it. So we delete 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now there are 0. So the idea is that you fake out the user connects to the authenticator, gives the PIN code, or you try to guess it, and then that's it. The credentials cannot be recovered anymore because they are deleted forever. And just another example, factory reset. So this is even better, even more destructive, different setup. So in this case, it requires can require, I mean, let me think. Sometimes, so over NFC, you just push the key near the phone, and that's it. The factory reset is done. Over laptop, you need to press it press the button. But other than these requirements, I will have to reset it and show you. Sorry. So over USB, I have to put the key in and perform the attack within 10 seconds. So I will be quick. I will put the key in. And now I will do factory reset, execute. Yeah, I think I was too slow. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I have a demo with the Android app. It's a little bit difficult in this setup to do it. So those are like, okay. This attack deletes the master key that encrypts everything in the authenticator. So the first one deletes only the discoverable credentials, the one stored. This one, since it destroys the master key, invalidates all credentials, the discoverable and the non-discoverable. So it has ripple effects on the line party. So even though we don't send anything to the line party, since we invalidate the key, since we we change the key, the authenticator cannot decrypt anymore any credential. And when it communicates with the line party, he will use the incorrect key, and the login will fail. So this is for, I will show you the demo on the phone. So let me share the screen. Okay. Okay. So this is, let me see if I can connect it. Otherwise, we just go to the other attacks. Yeah. It doesn't detect the phone. Okay. I will do it maybe later. Okay. So then the other attack technique, which is API confusion. So
sorry, Marco, for the NFC attack, maybe you can just show the phone that is touching the key and that's it, no?
Yeah. I guess I can just show you from the webcam. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Yes. Here. So here I have my setup. It's just written okay, UB key and factory reset, and I put the key near the NFC reader of my phone. So this could be you bumping into someone in a street, or you leave the key on the table, or you are in a concert and everyone is near. So it has range within a user pocket, or use a specialized antenna which extends the range. We've done this up to 8 centimeter, this attack. So because the key is not super powerful, so it's longer range than when you pay at the supermarket, but still, I just put it in. Here, it's I don't think you can read much. I think it's mirrored, but the red thing is factory reset complete. Yep. So now I just double check here that the key has been reset. So if I go.
Yeah, and while Marco is double checking this thing, I just wanted to clarify that we are not requiring a compromised device. So the devices that are used are devices owned by the attacker. So we don't have to infect a laptop with some sort of malware, or we don't have to infect somebody's smartphone. We are just using a smartphone as an attack device to attack over NFC, or whatever the victim is using as USB port. Then we can attack the key. And also,
right. Yeah. Someone on Discord had asked, and someone also on the stream here was asking, like, could you explain kind of like a high level attack scenario, how someone could go about doing this, just super high level?
Yeah, exactly. So for this attack technique that is called client impersonation, it suffices that the attacker is in NFC range, for example, with the victim's authenticator. And then the attacker, once the attacker is in NFC range, without requiring user interaction, the attacker can send whatever CTAP packet to the UB key, and then can cause different effects. For example, they can track the user because they can get the credential ID and all the things Marco showed before to create a fingerprint of a user and then track the user, or can factory reset the authenticator, can delete all discoverable credentials, and so on and so forth. And so this is the real world attack scenario. Another attack scenario might be let's say that there is, I don't know, a malicious USB hub or something like that, and then the victim is tricked into insert the key into a malicious hub, and then the attacker can send via the malicious hub packets to the authenticator.
Right. Nice.
And yeah, and also one important bit to understand is that this attack is being a protocol level attack. It's like attacking HTTP. So we don't really care what is the underlying transport, if it is NFC, USB, or BLE, and we can attack. And also we are not caring about the implementation details of the authenticator. So we can attack whatever key which is implementing the FIDO standard. So it's like breaking TLS, right? When you break TLS, you don't care about the implementation detail of the web server or the web client. So here is the same scenario. And so the amplification factor and the impact of the attacks is huge, because we can attack whatever device, right? We are not focusing on Ubico or whatever. Ubico is just one target, but we can attack whatever key.
Yeah, because someone was asking like specifically what companies like Ubico are doing to break or prevent these kind of attacks from being possible, but it sounds like it's in the specification itself, yeah?
Exactly. So either you patch the standard, and then we suggested some patches to the standard, or you can adopt some implementation-specific mitigations, which are not that trivial to adopt, because if your protocol is lacking authentication, then you cannot do that much, right? So,
do we know if we've seen these attacks in the wild, or like you guys discovered them? Yes, are these being used out there?
Yeah, we get this question often, but for us it's really difficult to answer this question, because we do research and then we discover new attack techniques, but maybe someone is using them without disclosing the exploits, right? So you never know. You never know. So we don't know.
And since they are protocol level, if you try to look for the code, you just see normal packets, right? So you have to understand the context if the user wanted to call a different API than the other one. So it will be hard to detect anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. Like I haven't seen any research on this before, so I was really excited to have you on for this. I know we interrupted you there, Marco. Were you about to continue showing something?
Yeah, just showing the Yeah, for example, so this is the message saying, since we factory reset the authenticator, there is no pin set. And this is the error saying, okay, you have to set the pin and then we can look into the credentials. But this means that it was factory reset correctly and there is nothing to do. So as you could see, the scenario is very clear, right? It's just put the key near a phone. This could be an attacker phone or an app that you install and you run. And we just need you one time to connect and you lose everything. And that's it.
Yeah. And by using something like a Proxmark, you can extend the range, because the Proxmark has a better NFC antenna, and so you can extend the range. If you use a smartphone, you have a limited range, and I think what was the maximum range
I think for the smartphone was 4 centimeters, and for the long range antenna Proxmark, it was up to 8, 10.
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
Going through clothes. So, for example, if you're in a bus and there is an attacker, the attacker can approach you and then tap a smartphone on your the YubiKey, and then can factory reset your YubiKey or something else.
Yeah, and someone was asking, like, would you still need to tie in a tool like EvilJinx if you wanted to completely get around multi-factor authentication bypass, or is the specification and protocol and the authentication and the way it works with something like a YubiKey, is that all you would need is to do this attack and then you get access to what you need?
Yeah, because I mean, our goal is not exactly to bypass multi-factor authentication. Here we are more like targeting the memory of the authenticator. And so that we are either destroying credentials or tracking someone based on what is stored on the authenticator, or denial of service in the authenticator. So we are not really trying to bypass multi-factor or two-factor authentication, because that is a cryptographic protocol that was well studied, formally verified, and there were a lot of research papers already looking at that. So it's also important to admit that being researcher, we have to find a niche and focus on some attack surfaces and attack techniques that were not explored before. So I'm sorry, we will not show a two-factor authentication bypass in this talk, but something that is slightly more niche and esoteric. Yeah.
It's funny because I often get asked by people like, hey, how do I go about identifying an attack surface that's interesting? And like, this is a perfect example of that. So
exactly. Yeah. Sure.
Great. So there was a bunch of questions I have from Discord. I don't know if you're ready to get some questions, or did you want to cover some more stuff first? Or
I think we can go through the questions and then we expand, because we have all the tooling that we can show, explain how you can do your own research on the FIDO.
Yeah.
But let's roll with the questions.
Yeah, I think that was actually one of the questions was like, how did you go about discovering these vulnerabilities? Like, what was your thought process?
Yes, perfect. So the first stop, of course, is the FIDO, the CTAP specification. So the FIDO Alliance website has the document. This is a draft for the newest standard. So sorry, the draft. This is the newest standard. So you just go here, and here are all the APIs. So first thing we said, okay, let's just study the standard and look at all the APIs and see if there are security or privacy issues. So first API, make credential. Okay, you have all the fields. So here we can see which security mechanism protect the API, and just look at what is possible from the fields. So for example, I mean, the most obvious one is the factory reset. So we go here and we just look, okay, resetting is a potentially destructive operation. Well, it's definitely a good place to start, right? And they just give us the command and say, okay, sure. How can you call it? We see all the requirements. So for an FC, you just connect and that's it. So, okay, we have an attack. Then after just looking at the protocol, another big thing is the Wireshark looking at the traffic, because we said, okay, let's go into a real website, let's trigger some traffic packet exchange and see what's happening. There were some dissectors in the wild, but we improved them to show more things and things from the latest CTAP versions. So here we've done a lot of FIDO operations in the demos, so we can see the traffic. I will just go, yeah. So not all traffic is analyzed, because there are a lot of packets, but the most important ones are. So this get info is the one that is the API that we call when we are describing the authenticator. So when we've seen the, I can just show you the traffic in real time, I think here. So this is the get info call. And this is the packet that requests the get info, and these 4 packets are the return value, and they are difficult to understand, to dissect, because this is a USB. So you have the CTAP protocol, then you have this wrapper, which is the CTAP HID packet that contains the CTAP protocol packet, so all the fields. Then you have this FIDO payload, the command, and the packet is encoded in CBOR, this concise binary object representation. So you have to understand this further, this other encoding, and for each field you have a value. So for example, here you have an array of items with an integer, and you have to go to the specification and say, okay, the array number 6, what is field number 6? And what are the possible values? So what is the value 1 of field 6? And you have to reverse it a little bit. You have to understand it. So that's why it took some manual effort to code all these manual CTAP API calls, because normal library is just call register and everything is done by them. But for us, we had to implement these low level API calls, because we wanted to.
Before that, you can also start from some open source implementation. So the nice thing about FIDO is that is a huge ecosystem. And so there are some open source implementations, one from Ubico. I think there is a Python library that you use, no? With an open source FIDO. So you can also look at some open source implementation. You have to look at the standard. in our case, since we are doing research, we have to look at the state of the art, right? So we read research papers, and then we try to reproduce some of the attacks in the state of the art, and then we have to come up with something that is novel. So, but if someone else wants to find similar vulnerabilities, then it's a different job, right? It depends also on what type of vulnerabilities you want to find. If you want to find an implementation level vulnerability in the firmware of the Ubico key, maybe you have to use fuzzing or something else. So it highly depends also on the type of vulnerabilities that you want to find. But in our case, since we specialize on protocol level stuff, protocol level vulnerabilities, we have to study the protocols and then re-implement them most of the times, reuse what is open source, and reverse engineer what is missing, and sometimes go one layer below and then implement something that gives us binary, byte level access to the packets, because sometimes we want to change bit fields, bytes, we want to send malformed packets, and so you need a bit of, but that is something advanced. So if you want to start working on FIDO, maybe you can start from the open source implementations and the specification. There is also a reference threat model. Do you have a link, Marco, to the reference threat model, which is also
yes,
nice?
I will,
yeah, there is a document that is provided by the FIDO Alliance, that is the consortium managing the FIDO specification, where they did a threat modeling exercise. They have a list of threats, they have a list of attacker models. This is extremely useful for someone who wants to start looking into these things. And as a result of our research paper, we also provided recommendations to the FIDO Alliance on how to change the reference threat model, because we think that there are some loopholes, there are some weaknesses in the reference threat model. For example, the lack of client authentication or a proper discussion of client impersonation attacks against FIDO or something like that.
Right. Yeah, it's great advice and recommendations there. How much time do you think you spent on your research putting all this together? If you had to put a time on it.
Yeah. So I guess we spent 6 to 7 months. The paper was kind of ready last year, but then we got sort of censored by the academic community, and so we had to wait 1 full year to publish, because the paper first was presented at an academic conference in 2025, but it was ready in 2024. But I guess, Marco, we spent 6 months, 6 to 9 months, to do the.
Yes. I would say for the baseline attacks, yes, and then we improved them. We improved how to perform them, or how to talk about them, to explain them better, because it's very hard to when we talk to the FIDO Alliance, they said, okay, this is our threat model, and everything works in our threat model, because for us the client is safe, so it's trusted. So we also had to talk about this.
Yeah.
And
right.
yeah, and also it's a little bit, let's say, difficult to I guess accept that newer feature create newer vulnerabilities, because these Discover credentials open a different attack surface, right? Because beforehand you didn't care about the factory resetting the authenticator, but this time they do. So FIDO is a very good standard. It's for sure better than the passwords, but still they are introducing new attacks. They claim it's passwordless, but you've seen that I had to put the pin, right? So it's a bit difficult to navigate all of this in a good way.
Absolutely. And someone is asking around if you could elaborate on API confusion. They said that their understanding is more around when there's like duplicate APIs, one with different roles than another. Is that what it is, or is it other things too?
Yeah. So yes, so this is our novel attack technique. We said, okay.
I think, Marco, you have a slide, no? You have a slide for that, no? So we can show it's I think it's easier if you help yourself with the slide.
Yeah, I guess just for just introducing. Okay, we said user verification, user presence. These are the prerequisites for performing API confusion, because there are compatibility, let's say, issues between APIs. If we call one API, we need it to be compatible in the requirements to the other API. So we have this list of which API requires which user verification, user presence, and then the actual, I think we have a table. Okay, here. So here there are the combinations. So we have the 7 core CTAP APIs, making a credential. So this is registering. Get assertion. This is for authentication. Credential management. This is the one to delete, list, enumerate, delete the discovered credentials. Client PIN, the one for user verification, to actually exchange the PIN, encrypted. Reset for the factory reset, and then other two. I will not talk about all of them, but basically the user wants to call make credential, expects to call make credential, expects to grant user verification and user presence in the case of make credential. This is a requirement that it's fixed, so he will provide them because he expects to provide them. Then the attacker has some choices depending on, let's say, how strong, how many permissions he gets from the user. So in this case, since make credential gets you user presence and user verification, you can call pretty much any API. So you can call credential management, which requires user presence. You can call reset, which requires user presence. You can call get assertion, but that requires depends on the configuration. You make credential, it's not applicable because it's the same API, so it's not confusion. You can confound to itself and compatible to everyone. And for the other ones, there are some requirements. So maybe it's only over NFC transport, or maybe you need this extension credential protection to be off, which is the default value. So Microsoft and Apple have this off. So it's not an unrealistic requirement. So this is the
Marco, sorry,
user wants to call
do you
an
have
API,
the slide with the man in the middle? The slide with the man in the middle,
yes,
for the API confusion.
So this is an example of the attack, yes.
The generic one with the API. Do we have
the
it?
generic one is here. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, the API confusion threat model is different. So now we have a man-in-the-middle attacker. Is not a client impersonation attack, and the client wants to call one CTAP API that we call in the figure we call it API A. But then the man-in-the-middle attacker is playing some tricks with the authenticator, and in the end, it calls API B. As we can see from the figure, there is an API B in red, so the API B is called by taking advantage of all the authorization that was provided by the client, so user verification, user presence, and so on and so forth. And so the attacker performs API B, and then it returns to the client a message saying, "Look, API A was successfully executed," and this is the confusion, right? This means that the user wants to, I don't know, create a new credential, a new FIDO credential, but at the end of the attack, the user instead deleted all of their credentials because of this API confusion, because the attacker changed from get credential, whatever, create credential, that is API B, API A, changed this message to delete all credentials and while talking to the authenticator. This is the essence of the high level this message of the attack. And
yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for the explanation. And I guess this is all low level. It can't be encrypted because these are the types of things that you need to be able to do to recover, and reset, right?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that this communication, I imagine, it can't be encrypted because it's so low level. It's before encryption would happen, or it's to reset your PIN and stuff like that, where it can't be encrypted. Is that true?
No, there is some encryption going on, but we can break also the encryption because it is a bit low level. But whenever you use a PIN during the authorization part, there is a protocol called user. What is the name, Mark, of the protocol? I think we have
PIN/UV out.
Yes, there is a diffie-Hellman. There is a diffie-Hellman going on in between the client and the authenticator. The problem is that this is a plain diffie-Hellman, which is vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks. There is no authentication. So we mount a man-in-the-middle attack in the diffie-Hellman during diffie-Hellman. And diffie-Hellman is implemented using elliptic curve because elliptic curves are typically, they have lower power consumption. Yes, so they can run on embedded stuff. But we are also breaking the diffie-Hellman thing. So there is some encryption going on. But to transmit the PIN.
I found the slide.
Yeah, exactly. This is the protocol run in a legitimate use case, so without the attacker in the middle. But if you now imagine an attacker in the middle, since there is no authentication, the attacker can generate two key pairs, one with the authenticator and one with the client, and then you have two channels, and then you can decrypt in the middle, and then you can change whatever you want.
Right. Nice.
So yeah. So you need some sort of certificate-based authentication here or something else if you want to prevent the attack.
Yeah. And this is also meaningful only for APIs that require user verification, because APIs are sent plain text. So if you don't need user verification, you don't need to do this Kurdi-Feldman man in the middle attack. You don't need the secret, the PIN. So you can just do it.
Yeah, the thing is the blue box is optional. If there is no user verification required, you just skip that part and you can go straight into the last part.
And someone had a good question. I think it was from earlier when you were talking about non-discoverable or discoverable, and since discoverable allows you to see the pins or whatever to reset them. I guess the question is, if the user does select non-discoverable, does that mean it prevents the attack from being possible?
Yeah, that's a very good question. But I guess there are some attacks that are effective both on discoverable and non-discoverable credentials. Marco, correct me if I'm wrong, but the factory reset attack is deleting discoverable and non-discoverable credentials. Because one important thing to realize about FIDO is that the credentials are not always stored in the key. The non-discoverable credentials are stored in the backend. The discoverable ones are stored in the key, and the discoverable ones are the pass keys. But if you factory reset the authenticator, you delete the master key that is used to encrypt and decrypt the non-discoverable credentials. And so by factory resetting it, you are also invalidating the non-discoverable credentials, and you are also causing an indirect effect on the backend. So just by sending a malicious CTAP packet, you are breaking the credentials that are stored in the Facebook server, in the Microsoft server. And so yes, we can affect both discoverable and non-discoverable credentials.
Basically, it depends on the API. Some APIs only work for both types of credentials. Some of them are not dependent on credentials, like get info of the authenticator. It's not dependent on a credential creation. And some of them are only for discoverable, like the credential management is made for discoverable credentials. So it's not a question of which credential is stronger. It's just a trade-off. Depends on what you value more.
Right. Great. Makes sense. Someone's asking from a defensive perspective, are there any detection signals or anything else where you could identify an impersonation or confusion attack in progress, or is that unlikely because it's just also local to a system?
Yeah, it's very difficult to detect because the attack is using standard compliant packets. So we are not sending malicious payload, or we are not corrupting the stack. We are not. So the protocol level attacks are quite difficult to detect, even if you have real-time capture capabilities. So the thing, more than detecting, the best strategy is to fix the protocol. And then if you fix the protocol, you don't require the detection.
Great. So I'm looking on Discord here real quick. So I guess it's a good question, but I think it's a question better for Yubico and such. But how can we cryptographically or contextually bind API calls so that an attacker in the middle can't redirect or confuse one API to another?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Yeah, Marco, maybe you can go ahead.
Yeah. So here in our explanation, I will bring up the user verification protocol because that's where this happens. So we had a lot of discussions with Daniele about this. So basically, what we, let's say, don't show just a little bit here is that when you are calling an API that requires the user verification, you have the PIN code, but this PIN code, so the packets have, let's say, replay protection, because if you just intercept the packet, sorry, let me connect a bit better. Okay. I don't want to overcomplicate the answer. So there is a permission saying this token. When you are performing user verification, you can say this token that you generate by submitting the PIN can only be used for selected APIs. So you can have access control. So if the user wants to generate a token, he in theory, if the client could say the user wants to just register, so only registration is possible. So you can't use it for credential management to delete the credentials, for example. There are a few issues. First, only 4 APIs are supported. So it's not that you can select any API you want, only 4 of them. And also, by default, everything is available. So even if there is this option, in the wild, we didn't see any client doing this access control. It's just the token was granted as is. So that's the idea. In a man-in-the-middle setup, since you are in the middle, you can just change the permissions anyway, because the permissions are inside the call from the client to the authenticator. They're not chosen by anything else. So the client says, I want just one specific permission, and the middle attacker says, I want to enable all of them. And as for all of our attacks, since there is no feedback from the authenticator, the user doesn't know if his password, the PIN code was used for 1 API, 2, 3, multiple calls, factory reset instead of make credential, or if we change the access control. So yeah, there is nothing in place to avoid this, at least in our man-in-the-middle setup. Yeah.
Right. That's good explanation. Thanks. The same individual, I don't know if this is a question that's really answerable, but I'll ask it anyway. How do we prevent ECC key exchange in FIDO2 CTAP from being misused by an attacker in the middle to reset pins and impersonate the user? So is there anything, I guess, that can be fixed about the way you're able to get in the middle with the key?
You have to use an authenticated version of EC elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. This is the way to go. Then might be difficult to authenticate with certificates, for example, the various entities in this scenario. But this is the way to go. Or the other option is to use password authenticated key exchange, but then you go back to square one because you require a password. So, because there are several ways to perform authenticated key exchange, and one way is to involve password, but we want to get rid of passwords. So, although with passkeys we are still required to enter a PIN, which if you read through the line is still a password. So it's a bit it's tricky.
Right.
It's tricky. Yeah.
I've got one final question here. I don't see any others, but there's been quite a few. There's some good questions too. But this one is, hey, I'm just a CISO, so be gentle. It says, my organization uses YubiKeys. We thought we're doing the right thing. I guess the wording should be, how great of a risk, like what would you rate this risk as at that organization? Like, is it something they should be really concerned about, or is it not likely something that they wouldn't be a target of? I guess and what the impact would be. So I tried to take a paragraph of somebody sent me and just put it into a question. I can repeat myself if you need.
Yeah, maybe I can provide my opinion. Then Marco, you can provide yours. But so first of all, I just want to clarify that this is not only a YubiKey problem. Right. It's every every FIDO authenticator in the market is affected by the attacks. So we are not blaming YubiKey here, right?
Right.
Second, I would be worried because someone can delete credentials. And deleting credential is a destructive operation that can cause a lot of troubles, right? For example, someone might not be able to log in to a service that is critical. There might be an emergency situation, and then you cannot log in. Especially with passkeys, because with passkeys you are not relying on a password, but then there is no more factor, right? So if you kill the passkey, then you cannot log in. Instead, in a multi-factor authentication, you could mitigate this problem by requiring a third factor, which can kick in when the FIDO authenticator does not work. like an SMS or a rolling code, then you have other problems associated to these multi-factor authentication techniques, because someone can trick you into revealing your SMS OTP or something like that, but still you can mitigate the thing. But if your organization relies 100% on passkeys, then the risk is really high. Two-factor authentication with YubiKey, also the risk is high, I would say. Marco, please, if you want to add something, please chime in.
Yeah, I think I guess one point is that let's say you fear that the passwords are stolen, right? You say, okay, you are logging with a password, it gets stolen, and you log into it. You say, okay, now I use FIDO, and I should be protected, right? But the thing is that you can still guess the password authenticator, so it's still the same thing. FIDO, the main selling point is the unphishable, meaning that if you go to a website, the key understands that this is a malicious website, which is something very similar to password managers. So I think sometimes there is, let's say, you might think that the security guarantees of FIDO are higher than the ones that are actually in place, because they say, okay, everything is protected, but if the threat model is the correct one, everything you can't use the key, but you can still guess the password, because if a user is lazy, it will put 111 as the PIN code, and that's it, right? It's just like a screen lock or the most common password. The techniques are still similar. So I think this is a consideration where they're still better, but yeah, you have to know how to use them. And
great. Yeah. So I thought that was the last question.
And, I also think that sorry, just the one thing. And I guess one risk that is not there with the previous method with like password is the tracking. I think the tracking attack is very cool, because normally, even if they stole your account, they can't really have a list of all your other websites. But in this case, we introduced this kind of scenario where you get all the websites and you can use the key for all of them. So I think this is a risk that was not there, and you have to account for.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and just to mention, we found an implementation bug on YubiKey. We have a CVE, and this CVE is that only on YubiKeys. Normally, in order to get all the relying parties, you need to provide user presence. Okay, you need to raise some security mechanism, so you can't really just use it as is. But in the YubiKey firmware, the old one, so you could list all credentials without any security mechanism. Basically, there was a begin command requiring the security, the user verification and presence, and the enumerate the other ones does not require anything. You are supposed to call the begin and then the other ones. But if you skip the begin in YubiKey, you can call the other commands without any repercussion, because the key doesn't recognize that you are breaking the flow, the correct flow. So this was an issue. We reported it to YubiKey, and they released a new firmware that patches it. So now you can't do this, but still all YubiKeys with the previous firmware are vulnerable, and there is no firmware update, so everything is vulnerable, and anyone can just connect the authenticator and look at all your websites with discoverable credentials.
Wow.
So
that's wild. So as I was saying, I'm just going to throw this one last question in there, because someone just hit me on Discord and said they actually were at your talk at DEF CON and they wanted to ask you this question. So it's a bit of a long one, so I'll read it slowly, but this will be our last one. So thank you. It says in your paper, you identify authenticated CTAP client as a root vulnerability, allowing many of the CTRAPS attacks because of the authenticator cannot distinguish a legitimate client from a spoofed or malicious one. what are the design challenges and trade-offs in adding client authentication to the CTAP protocol? Specifically, how might you implement client authentication in a backward compatible way that does not break existing authenticators or clients, while also not introducing unacceptable usability, deployment, or performance burdens?
Yeah, I can get this one.
It's a big one.
No, the question, yeah, it's a big one, but it goes to an important point. So the trade-offs are that, so if you look at how authentication works in the web, then whenever you visit google.com, you get a certificate, and that certificate is binding the domain name and of Google and the public key. And so you could implement something similar to authenticate the client. But the problem is that when you have a client, what do you bind to, right? So you have a public key, but then do you bind to the FIDO library of the client? Do you bind it to the serial number of the authenticator? So it's not as straightforward as in a web use case where it's clear the identity of an entity is clear. Here it's a bit tricky. So maybe you could have some sort of software supply chain verification that goes on where FIDO is only whitelisting several vendors, and these vendors, they are getting a certificate. There is like a FIDO PKI infrastructure, and then you can use the FIDO PKI infrastructure to. But that is a burden, right? And then you immediately understand that there are some usability security trade-offs there. So it's this is the main issue.
Wow, yeah, that's a great. I mean, really shows that you did all of your research on this, and I really appreciate you, putting that out there and joining me on the stream and contributing to the community. That's what this channel is all about trying to give back and help people out, and just great job on the research. It's good. Yeah,
thank you very much for the invitation.
Cool. So that will bring us to the end. We will the video, of course, will be on YouTube afterwards, and I'll put all the links up to the papers and the socials for Mark and Daniel. And we will be back soon. We've got a bunch of upcoming streams. I think the next one, I believe it's the one I thought was out of order. I think it's the one on rootkits and bootkits, which should be pretty exciting in Windows kernel. I know a lot of folks have been asking for that as well. So we got a lot of great content coming out. I'm going to post a tweet soon with this stream link and then also the upcoming ones. But otherwise, have a great weekend, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Mark and Daniel. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you for hosting us.
Bye-bye.